for you. There is still hope for you in spite of your struggles, heartaches, and troubles. No matter what you are going through, there is still hope for you. There is still hope for you in spite of your struggles, heartaches, and troubles. No matter what you are going through, there is still hope for you. There is still hope for you in sickness and sorrow. There's hope for tomorrow. God understands and He'll see you through. There is still hope for you. There is still hope for you in spite of your struggles, heartaches, and troubles. No matter what you are going through, there is still hope for you. There is still hope for you in seasons of sadness. Be strong, it won't last. God understands and He'll see you through.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to There Is Still Hope for You. I am your guest, Pastor Karen, and I am so happy that you have taken time to join us on this evening. Hope everyone is staying cool wherever you are in the world. Thank you again for sharing your evening with us, and I would like to ask you, if you don't mind, to please share the broadcast. There's always something that is said to encourage others, to let them know that there is hope. You know, sometimes we are at different places in our lives and things appear to be hopeless. But if you can hear my voice today, and if you can see my handsome guest sitting here today, know that there is definitely hope for you. For those of you tuning in for the first time, I want to thank you for being here. Thank everyone for your support on YouTube, on There's Still Hope for You Facebook page, on my personal Facebook page, all of the followers of R. Allen Brooks that are tuning in. Thank you so much for joining us. Just to give you a little overview of what this broadcast is all about, we share our stories to encourage, to empower others. This broadcast was birthed out of me making some decisions in my life to redirect. I had been struggling with low self-esteem, rejection, a little mild depression, and I made a shift in my life. I am a believer, and so I apply biblical principles to my life, and I allow God to heal me and deliver me from all that pain that was causing me to be paralyzed and stopping me from walking in my purpose. And I often say I was functioning, but I was dysfunctional, because I was masquerading. I was walking around with a mask, appearing to be happy, but in the inside so torn up because I couldn't follow my dreams. A lot of my hopes and dreams have been shattered. So as a result, I said I was going to share, and my guests come and they do the same thing. All of our stories are different, but our stories are stories to encourage you, to let you know there is hope for you. So that's a little bit about the broadcast and how it was birthed. Now I have this guest this evening. All of my guests are special. I guess y'all say you say that every week. I do because they're awesome. Because all of them are special. But this handsome guest today happens to be my cousin. And I am so elated to have R. Allen Brooks. Yes, it's a Brooks thing. R.
Right.
Allen Brooks with me on this evening. Let me tell you, the more Alan and I talk, the more he inspires me, the more I find out. It's like, wow, cousin, you got this going on and you doing this. I'm telling you, he is awesome. I could say very little about him that would not equate to who he really is and what he does. So I'm just getting ready to turn this right on over to Alan. Alan, you can formally introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do and what you would like to share with us on this evening with our audience to encourage them, to let them know there is hope. Thank you again for accepting the invitation. Look, my cousin when I grow up, I want to be like him. He got me all nervous and everything. It's like, am I doing it right, cousin? Because he is just, as they say, he's dope. He's the bomb. And I'm just so honored that you accepted the invitation. So, Alan, without further ado, I am turning the broadcast over to you.
All right. Hey, I appreciate you having me on your show. It's cool to sit and talk with you. You did already a pretty good introduction. First of all, I want to say that theme song you got. I never heard that song. That was great. I like that a lot. It was a cool song.
Actually, I had this young man. He was a guest on my show as well.
Yeah.
And I think he may be just around 30, and
Okay.
he's a producer and he's a musician. I said, look, I need a theme song. I need something that's going to speak hope. So he wrote that especially for me, for this
Wow.
broadcast, right? So you won't hear it again unless you hear it here. So thank
That's
you.
so
I get a
good.
lot of feedback, and I always try to make him aware. Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you
I'm
for
glad
that.
because that was great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So let's see. So I write comic books and graphic novels. They're usually around social issues. Sometimes I draw them, but I usually work with other artists to get them to draw. I teach graphic novel writing at Regis University. I write a weekly newspaper comic for the Colorado Sun. I am about to start hosting a new podcast for the Museum of Contemporary Art here in Denver, which is where I'm located. I will have an exhibit at Denver Art Museum soon in October. I wrote and drew a comic about Nat Love. He's a black cowboy from the 1800s. He was 11 years old when slavery ended. And so I had to read his autobiography and translate it to a few comics pages. That's my lady there, Juanine Young, who's saying she loves the theme song too.
Hey, yes. Wow.
So, yeah, so I guess writing, speaking, stuff like I gave a TED Talk that was posted on TED.com in February, and it's at 1.3 million views right now, which is more people than have ever seen me do anything. So that was kind of cool. Because I gave the talk to an empty room because of the lockdown. So I didn't know how I was going to do. But the funny thing is when you go watch it, when they put it on TED.com, they edited in applause at the beginning, which is funny to me because I did it in an empty room. But when you go watch it, you hear applause and music.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah, so that's the stuff I'm doing right now. I was thinking about, you're talking about hope and like living in a state where you feel kind of depressed and people think you're okay and all that stuff. You and I talked about this a little bit. I'm not going to say the name of the person, but I used to, when I was in my 20s, I worked for a popular televangelist in Atlanta. I produced this TV show. And I was miserable at that job, you know. I was probably like 23. So I went to church there, and I produced a TV show. And to tell you how much I didn't like the job. First of all, I had to dress up, which has never been my thing. I definitely don't get that from my dad. Right? But my mother tells me that she thinks that the reason I hate dressing up is because when I was an infant, whenever my dad picked up his tie, that meant he was going to work, and leaving the house. And I would start crying whenever he picked up his tie. But for whatever reason, I just don't like ties and dress shirts. It just feels confining and ugh. But anyway, okay. So I was working at this ministry, and it was like a Wednesday, and then we had church that night. So I would get off work maybe like 5, and the church would start at like 7:30. So I went home for a couple hours, came back for church, and when I went to park in the parking lot, I saw that somebody had tied a tie onto the the light post, and I went over and it was my tie, which meant that when I was leaving work, I was just like, and threw the tie off, which I don't even remember doing. And somebody found it in the parking lot and tied it on the thing so somebody could find it.
My.
Yeah. But there was one period where I was walking through the halls there, and my hair was cut short, and I was in a shirt and tie and slacks. And one of the administrators who worked there was like, "Hey, Alan." And I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I had this picture of myself. I just got this snapshot. And I realized that I was like making my voice higher to be less threatening. I was dressed not like myself. I was walking in a way that wasn't like me. And I just felt like I had completely lost myself. I think it's the story of the prodigal son, where they say he came to himself. And that's what that felt like to me in that moment. Like, I came to myself. I suddenly just saw how far away from myself I really was. And that really kind of made me think, okay, I need to change my life, because if I don't, I'm going to be here in the next 10 years. I'm going to live, I'm going to be in my 30s and 40s here and be miserable and never fulfilled. And so that was kind of the beginning of me starting to try to change my life and move towards more creative and artistic things. I can talk more about that, but I don't like just talking straight up for like an hour. Do you have thoughts about this?
Oh, trust me. Look, I'm broke. We're going to be dialogue. This is going to be a good dialogue. We'll go back and forth. I'm just letting you get it out.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, I started growing my hair longer then, and started walking like myself. And I realized that this wasn't an accident that I'd become like this. They had been messing with me, but like in really subtle ways that I was too young to recognize. But when I was trying to like sort of recover myself, suddenly I was running up against the confinements that they built in. So I remember after that time when I came to myself, I saw I was at lunch and I was just walking through the parking lot. It was a nice sunny day, and I was just whistling to myself, just enjoying outdoors. And I was walking through the parking lot. I saw the HR director take note of me. She was walking another way, take note of me and make a U-turn to come mess with me about some policy thing. And I'm certain it was just because I was content, When I started noticing that, I noticed that happened a lot. Like, if ever I was at peace or if I seemed confident or happy, then somebody in authority made it their priority to kind of tear that down. And so that really made it clear to me that I needed to leave, And I did finally make my way out of it.
Wow, that's awesome. You said a couple of things that kind of stuck with me. You talked about, you recognized that you needed to make a change. And I know today, I'm sure you, as well as our viewing audience, know of people, if not yourselves, that times in your life that you recognize that you need to make a change. But many times we find ourselves stuck in whatever situation we're in, because although we know that we need to make a change, we don't move forward to do that. We don't pursue change for multiple reasons, because of fear, because of lack of knowledge.
Right.
And fear can be fear of rejection, fear of failing. What process, or what would you suggest to someone that may be listening today that may be in a situation similar to what you shared, whether it be a job or a home or a relationship or whatever the case, but they know that they need to make a change for the betterment and improvement of their lives, but they don't know how. They don't even know how to get started. What would you say to them today?
That's a good question. I mean, back then, it was hard for me. You know, I was probably 23. That was my first job out of college. So I didn't even know if I could get another job, you know? And what really kind of pushed me was when they fired my best friend, and he was doing very well there. But he also was doing well other places, and they got jealous of it, and they, fired him. But but even that, like, so they fired him on a Friday, and I was scheduled to go on vacation on that Monday. So I went out of town to this Christian music conference that used to happen. It was called Cornerstone. It was kind of like Woodstock, like a Christian Woodstock. And anyway, so I was out there, and I was catching a shuttle from the hotel to like the campgrounds where the music was happening. I just happened to talk to somebody. It was a woman named Bronwyn, and we were just talking about it. She was like, "What do you do?" And I was like, I work at this job, but I'm not happy with it." And she was like, "Oh." And she said, "Are you married?" And I was like, "Oh, no." She was like, "Do you have kids?" And I said, "No." And she's like, "So why are you working a job that you don't like?" Which was interesting to me. Just kind of like, if you were going to take any kind of risk, this was the best time.
Right. What's holding you back?
Right. And so I went back and put in my notice for the job, and I worked that job one more week and left. And it was only because they tended to fire people when you put in 2 weeks notice. They were just kind of dirty that way. But
thing for in the corporate world.
Yeah. But I think when you need to make a change, it's important to think about, first of all, change is uncomfortable just by its nature. But think about, what actually do you want? And what things do you need to change in order to get there? Because a lot of times we want a change, but we don't know what change we want. And so we end up falling into, if we don't choose something, then it gets chosen for us. Like a job will come up and we'll be like, well, that's different, but it might not be what we want. Or a romantic opportunity will come up, and it might not be what we want. It just is something different. But I think if you are identifying clearly, hey, this is what I want. This is where I would like to be in a year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. Then start thinking about, what are the steps between here and there? I talk with a lot of people who are creative about how they're going to finish their book or their painting or their album or whatever it is. And a lot of it is that you have to make a plan on what you want, and then identify the steps and do those steps. Because if you're waiting for inspiration comes and goes. You can't make a living off inspiration.
That's right. That's good. Yeah, I often talk about, I'm a certified life coach, a certified master life coach. I have 5 certifications. And in my practice, I often share with my clients the same thing. You have to set goals. You set sub goals. You celebrate every victory. Because many times we become discouraged because we want to go from A to Z. And that was me one time, being impatient. It's like, I just want to know how to get it done. And I want to start here and be finished,
Right.
Being very detail oriented. But it's really important. Like you say, you have to, first of all, make up your mind, recognize you need to make a change, what changes you're going to make. And you have to have a plan. Anything without a plan is you're going to fail. It's just an idea. It's just a dream. It's just a
Right.
thought, until we actually do something to activate and to move forward. That's good, cousin. That's good. I knew I was going to enjoy this. You have a wealth of information and so knowledgeable. So I know that you're going to be a blessing and have already begun to be a blessing to everyone who views, and also to the replay. To the replay watchers, welcome, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to watch even after the broadcast. Thank you again for taking the time to share the broadcast. Alan, I wanted to also, you mentioned about the talk, is it called Talk TED?
TED Talk.
TED Talk. Oops. I just totally flipped it around. But, you mentioned the comic books in your interview there. And actually, I watched that. I was looking at it last night, and I didn't realize that it was an empty room. I mean, you were flowing. I thought you were talking to a whole audience of people. Well, technically, I guess you were, in your mindset. You knew you would be. But it's some things that, and I know this is public knowledge and a lot of people may have already seen it, but you shared a little bit on that about how you started, your desire to become an artist and to write, and the controversy that you faced. And as I was listening, I said, that's what a lot of us go through. We may not be an inspired writer, or our goals may be different. However, many times we struggle with what's being said, what's going in our ear gates, other people's opinions. Many of us do not walk in purpose because we're listening at what everyone else says. Now, I'm not saying that we don't need mentors and coaches. Of course we need coaches. I'm a coach. So coaches are good, and I'm a mentor. So no, I'm just, all jokes aside, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is we have to know what's best for us and be in pursuit of follow your dreams, follow your heart, and if you don't mind sharing with us some of the challenges you faced as you had that desire to become a writer and to write comic books in particular, some of the things that you were faced with, and what was it like to move forward with the things that have been said, maybe not intentionally to discourage you, but they did discourage you for a minute?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that question.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I was thinking, so when I grew up in Atlanta, which is where I'm from, first of all, growing up in the church, there were a lot of great things that I learned from the church, but there was not a great appreciation of creative people. As artists, church often treated people who were artists like they were weird or irresponsible. But then when they needed something done, like if they need somebody to draw a flyer, then all of a sudden, you're cool. But I think in the TED Talk, I kind of talked about the context of like my parents being of the age where they would have been just a couple years old when Emmett Till was lynched. And so growing up during civil rights for them and having all of those sort of clear memories of the possibility of Black people being hung and lynched, it has an effect where we learn to not stand out. There's a lot of fear. Like if we stand out, that might cause us to be murdered. And so my parents being raised in that time and then raising me, and, I immediately stand out as someone who is, straight A student, likes comic books, raps, likes Weird Al Yankovic, like just weird stuff like that, right? All of that feeds into what it meant to be Black and be an artist. Because in some ways embracing art means that you do stand out. And it also means that I was kind of running up against my parents' own reasonable concerns about my safety. It wasn't like they were being unreasonable, especially given the context of what they grew up with. So between church and my parents and the community at large, I got this message that being an artist is irresponsible and it's a pipe dream and on some levels it's selfish. Mm-hmm. And so I went through a lot of years of struggling with that, and I started to really think about how important art has been in all the major changes in the world. Mm-hmm. Like every revolution has been centered around art being able to inspire. Like if we think about, and I think I said this in a talk, but if we think about the civil rights movement, how they were all singing gospel songs, when dogs were being set on them and hoses turned on them, the power of those songs is what kept them inspired, Mm-hmm. Or we think about powerful writers, poets like Nikki Giovanni or Langston Hughes or James Baldwin, who did so much to communicate the experience of Black people in this country in a really powerful way. And then I think about French poets who their stuff was significant during the French Revolution. And I started to look into how dictators work so hard to control and censor art. And they wouldn't if it didn't have any power. If it really was silly, they wouldn't be trying to control it. They wouldn't care about it. But so it told me, okay, these people know that art is important. So why am I doubting it? So that was kind of the spiritual journey for all of that. Mm-hmm. The more sort of practical journey was, I was actually pursuing music for a lot of years. I would rap and have jazz musicians back me up, like hire a keyboard player and a drummer and sometimes a bass player. And I was doing a lot of shows, but I was never really getting the traction that I wanted. Mm-hmm. I was getting paid, but not like a lot, Mm-hmm. And I couldn't get any coverage in the paper.
Stipends. You were getting stipends, not really paid.
Right. I remember, okay, this is kind of fun. One time I was trying to get coverage in one of the papers here in Denver, and they have like a best of, and they do it every year. And I had two friends who were musicians who hadn't performed for a year. They took a year off to concentrate on other things, and they still showed up in the best of. Wow. And so I was like, these reporters, man, they ain't even trying to find that. And these are people who ain't performed in a year. How are they in the best? It just showed me kind of like, I guess I thought that they were out there like going to shows and trying to like compile a list, but no, they just were like, well, let's put these people from last year. Mm. So there was a point where I had a full band, and they would, even though I wasn't making a lot of money, I was making enough that they were paying their rent off of my shows.
Wow.
We did like 52 shows in a year once, and they were all paid. Yeah, so like, but no, not all of them. Most of them had attitude for some reason. Now, I would book the show. Mm-hmm. I would pick the songs. I would lead the rehearsals. I would design the posters. I would put them all around town. I would send out the email list. I would, just do all that coordination. All they had to do is show up and play and get paid, and they still would have attitude,
Wow.
And eventually it just kind of stressed me out, and I was like, mm-hmm. For all of this headache, all these headaches, I could do something square and make more like a decent living, Mm-hmm. And so I quit music and opened up an insurance agency, which is the squarest thing that I could think of, I guess. And so I did that for like 4 years. And, it was okay. I did okay. I made okay money, but I hated it. The first 2 years, I did it with farmers insurance. And then the next two, I moved into health insurance. Mm-hmm. The hard thing about health insurance is when people are sitting with you and you're like signing them to a policy, they're trying to figure out ways to save money, which I get, right? They'll be like, can I take this off? Can I take this off? And I'll say, well, yes, but if you take this off, if something happens, you're not going to have this coverage. And they'll be like, oh, I don't need it, right? And then 6 months, a year later, something would happen. And they were mad at me because they didn't have the coverage. Mm-hmm. And even though intellectually I knew that it wasn't my fault, emotionally it was hard for me to deal with people being mad at me about something I don't care about. I don't care about insurance. Right. You know? So, so I guess 2016, I quit insurance. Now, before I quit, I took like a month off. And I was like, I was thinking, okay, I'm unhappy. And I had been reading comic books since I was 5, but I had never written any. And it was a weird place because, you know, I was probably like 39, 40 years old. And I was like, what are my parents going to think if I say that I'm quitting insurance to write comic books? And, you know, it sounds not smart. It sounds stupid, you know? And I was really thinking about that, but then I was also like, all right, but I'm all the way grown. I'm, 40. Like, I'm not going to get no more grown. So I just need...
Hello?
So I need to think about it, figure out what I'm going to do. And I actually was able to go to Europe for a month. And it was my first time out of the country. And all of that had its own questions for me, right? Like, I didn't know how people in these countries felt about Black people. I just didn't know what it would be like. And I traveled alone. So I went to Berlin, Prague, Budapest, and London.
Wow, nice.
And I spent a week in each place. And I went to comic book stores in every place. And the only place I didn't buy any comic books from was the guy in Budapest because he was a jerk. So
I'm not buying your books.
Yeah. But I bought comic books everywhere else. But the interesting thing for me was like people like me, people really embraced me. And I realized that, okay, if I died at this age, because I was seeing all these rappers who were dying around my age, there were a few years. So I was like, if I died at this age, I would die as an insurance man. And that's not what I want, Mm-hmm. And so I thought, okay, well, I've never made a lot of money as an artist. I've struggled quite a bit. But maybe I just need to decide that it's worth it to me to be happy and fulfilled and maybe not have the big house and the car and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so, I came back and that's what I was prepared to do, is just not make a living. I'm not that I wasn't going to try, but I was prepared. Right. I was like, if it doesn't work, like if my choices are make a lot of money but be unhappy, or be happy and not make a lot of money, I'm going to choose be happy and not make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I got really clear about that. And so when I came back, I did a Kickstarter. And I wrote this graphic novel called The Burning Metronome, worked with a couple of really talented artists on it. And I self-published it. And ever since then, all of these crazy things have happened. So that book came out in 2017. Maybe 8 or 9 months after it was out, someone from Regis University reached out to me. And then asked if I wanted to teach in their master's program, teach graphic novel writing. So somehow they read it and decided that what I did was good enough that I could teach it.
Look at that.
So that was amazing. And then there was a new newspaper starting up. These were journalists who had left the Denver Post. They had been journalists for maybe 20, 30 years. And they decided we're going to start their own paper. And they needed some comics for it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so they reached out to me, and I designed a comic for them and hired artists. And that's now been running for like 2.5 years. That paper has grown. We won like a journalism award for that comic strip. And then, it led to the TED Talk, which, like I told you, has all those views. And it's just been amazing. I mean, like, all the stuff that I was trying to do in music, none of it happened, but all of it's happening in writing, you know?
And that was your desire. I mean, that was your ultimate passion, was to write comic books initially, correct?
Yeah, I mean, comics were my first love. I've been reading them since I was
Yeah.
5 years old. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. That's really amazing. And you recently had another interview.
Yeah, I was interviewed on Colorado Public Radio because I did another comic that's like a one-shot story with this artist. Her name is Sarah Menzel Trappel. She's really talented. And it's for a book that's coming out on September 19th, which it'll be on my website when the time comes. But, okay, so with this book, I wanted to sort of explore how to deal with grief. 2 years ago, like maybe 8 years ago, my mother almost died. She's fine now, thank God. Like, fully recovered. But it made me think, like just the thought of her dying, man, it just tore my brain up, And so I thought, well, man, like, grief is something, like, and are there ways that I can prepare for it? I started asking myself that. And I have not answered that question yet. But one of the things that I noticed is that one of the greatest regrets people have when someone dies is the things that they haven't said, things that they haven't expressed.
Right.
Either the person who's dying, like on their deathbed, is sad about what they didn't express, or the person who loses someone is sad about what they didn't express to them. And so I wrote this story that kind of is like a character trying to reconnect with her dead mother, and there was a lot of unsaid stuff between them. But the interesting thing about that book is the artist, Sarah, who I mentioned, she asked if the main character could be plus size. And Sarah herself is plus size.
Okay.
And so I was like, that's a great idea. Cool, let's do that. And so after she finished drawing it, Sarah told me that in the drawing of the book, it healed some of her own insecurities and phobias about her body, And that's not something I could have predicted,
Right.
But I just think it's beautiful that art that we created together had a healing effect on her in the making of it.
Yes. Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what we're talking about in an interview, is like the body image stuff and what it means and how it is for her to not have to draw like skinny superhero chicks,
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. I'm sure that was very therapeutic for her. As you said, it brought a lot of healing just from her writing. And a lot of times I find as artists, we do, even with writing, although I don't write music, but just in general, just writing, a lot of times we express ourselves through writing, and as artists, through our art and you talking about, oh my goodness, you've been so you are a rapper. I'm not going to say was. I mean, you are a artist. I mean, a real artist, a well-rounded artist. That's really awesome. Wow. So much creativity there. And, a lot of times, well, I'm a graphic artist, and I do web designs. I do all type of graphic artists and all. And a lot of times as an artist, we tend to not reach our fullest potential because we're like in this comparison mode, if I may use that terminology. We look at other artists and it's like, well, mine is not like theirs, or, even as you started out talking about the church, well, I don't want to sing because I don't sing like her, or, talking about rapping, well, my music doesn't sound like his or hers. But I feel like as an artist, we have to learn that we have our own unique level of creativity, our own designs, our own vision. And that's what makes us an artist. So, a lot of times I feel that people that could be very good artists in whatever arena they may choose, but I think that looking at others, that comparison thing often hinders them. What would you say to encourage someone that feels like, oh, I want to write, or I like to rap and I know I can sing, but I'm scared because I look at this one and my cousin does it and they're so successful, but they have that fear again of failure. How would you encourage them this evening?
Yeah, that fear of failure is a beast.
Yes, a big one.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think as far as finding your own voice, we're often like stuck on this, like we have to have an original idea and it has to be completely different. But really, when it comes down to it, it's the execution that makes it different. Like, if you could think of 30 people that you know pretty well, like if any of them called you on the phone, they would say, hello, how you doing? They say pretty much the same words. But after you talk to them, after you get past the hello, if you talk to them for 3 minutes, you know who it is without them saying, and it's not because they came up with some original presentation. It's because they're themselves. And the one thing that people can't imitate is you. They can't be you. So, like if me and you both decide we're going to make a movie about, I don't know, cars that drive fast, the way that I do it is going to be different than the way you do it.
Yes.
Unless you are purposely or I am purposely trying to imitate what's out there. And so I think it's not as important to be stuck on what is an original idea, and it's more important to think about what matters to you in this idea and how do you want to do it. And then, the things that help in terms of presentation, like there's structure and the classes and stuff you can take that will help. But the important thing is that you are figuring out how you put yourself into this. What is your approach? And that you finish it. Finish it.
Uh-oh. Come into me. Finish it. I love it, though. I love it. Wow. And a lot of times that was me for so long, Alan. I mean, I was start and stop. When I got my first degree, I was so excited because it's like, I really finished something. And as I was sharing with you earlier, I guess maybe it's a Brooks thing, because as you were talking, I was like, wow, he sounds like me. You do so much. But the difference is you finished yours. A lot of mine, I did not, but just to be gifted and have the ability and be inspired to do different things, and for me, my struggle was I had so much on my plate. Then being a single mom, and then grandma was pastoring and my mother was pastoring, so assisting them. You know how family tree goes. So I was in church and working in a ministry, and then being a single mom, working full time, then had started a business and was going to school full time, pursuing these degrees. But yet I had all these ideas. It's like, I want to do this and I want to do that, and and so I think for me, now I realize they were excuses, but back then it seemed to be justifiable that I never finished anything. It's like I had all these unfinished projects. So eventually, two of my degrees are in project management. My master's is an MBA with concentration in project management. Of all things, I became a project manager. And so from that point on, I realized the importance of setting goals and, getting things done. So that's real good, to anyone listening now or that will watch the replay, set measurable, realistic goals. That's important. I think sometimes we take on too much at one time. And, it's not, sometimes it's impossible because we making unrealistic demands on ourselves within a certain time frame. And then we
Right.
don't get anything done. We keep going in circles, 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 circles. It's like you continue to repeat the same circle. It's like a recycle thing over and over again because we don't get anything done. And I started telling myself, Karen, you're just running in circles. What have you accomplished? But being exhausted and wasting time. So it's really important that we finish what we start.
Yeah, and I mean it's challenging. So I think some of the reasons people don't finish are that we want to be inspired. We're waiting for inspiration, right? Mm-hmm. But like I said, you can't make a living off inspiration. So the inspiration is for the idea, mm-hmm. but finishing it is work. Mm-hmm. And if you're waiting for inspiration to make you do work, you ain't gonna do it. Yeah. There's that writer Stephen King. He has a quote where he says, "Amateurs sit and wait for inspiration, while the rest of us just get up and go to work." Mm. And I mean, that's the real thing. Is that like the reason that we wanted to do art, the reason we wanted to be part of something, is because we were in some way inspired by art. And so it moved us in such a way that we were like, oh, I want to do something like that too. But the key is you cannot wait on inspiration to help you finish something. So when you get inspired, write that idea down. But then you have to dedicate a time to do it. Like making art is work. It's not always fun. It's work. Right.
Yeah, because you're up and do you find that you're more creative in the middle of the night?
Yeah, I am exactly the opposite of a morning person. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's weird. It's like that's when, I find that I'm more creative. Everything is quiet. You don't have to worry about the phone ringing. It's like you just flow,
Yeah, and I would say there's truth to that, but I would also say for people who are trying to figure out how to get stuff done, you have to pick a time and protect it, right? So like if you have, children run around, if your spouse is there, like people don't understand that art is serious. Like if you went to say, hey, I'm gonna do my taxes, they'll leave you alone, But if you say I'm gonna work on my book or I'm gonna go paint, they think, they just don't get it. They'd be like, oh, well, can you run by the store? Can we do laundry or whatever, right? So it has to be, you can't get mad about it. It just has to be up to you to decide, okay, once a month, I'm going to go to a coffee shop and I'm going to work on something. Or I'm going to go to the library or wherever it is. Like pick a time and a place and just every third Friday, or every Saturday or whatever your day is, and show up and work on it. Because enough of those Saturdays equals something finished.
I love that. That's good. Very good. Yes. Very good. Wow. Cousin, you something. I'm so glad you my cousin.
Thank you. Likewise.
I mean, really, really, yes. This is really, really good. I noticed as you're talking, really throughout the entire broadcast, you always you share your challenges and things that you've been challenged with, but it always reverts back to you. As with me, it would be me. And I think that's so good because I say often on many of the broadcasts and also in my practice that self-assessment is important. As you were talking, every time you said you did not like something or you chose to made a decision to make a change, you stated why you wanted to make that change. Because I didn't like it or I knew it wouldn't work for me. And I was talking with someone yesterday and they said, I wanted to be a doctor, but I changed my mind. And I said, why? And they said, I don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? There has to be a reason for you to make that decision. It's important that you understand why you want or you do not want. We just don't say, I don't know, or I just don't want to without a reason. And this was a young person that I was mentoring. So for them, I understood it. You know what I'm saying? But, I really as you were speaking, I said, wow, you express yourself very well. I can see you being a professor because you're very detailed, and you're a good example because even in your speaking, you identified the reason why you made a change,
Hmm.
the reason why you decided to no longer stay at the job, and you mentioned on I think 2 or 3 occasions that you took some time alone. You went away. You went off to the side. You took a month off before you made that final decision to think about it. Again, assessment, and I think that's really important to our success in whatever area, whatever we desire to do, because that time alone helps you to analyze what it is, what the benefits are, what the pros and cons are. As you said, do I want to be happy and make less money? Or do I want to be rich and miserable or doing something I don't like? And that's something to really think about. And I think many times in life, we become hopeless in certain situations, or we feel like there isn't a way out because we move too quickly without taking time to really analyze, is this what I want? Is it going to work for me? What sacrifices are required? Because there are always sacrifices to be made. Is it worth it? What are the benefits? So I really love the way you just the way you share, because
Hmm.
you're well rounded and you cover so much, and I know that our audience is receiving a lot from this on tonight. I hope y'all have pencil and pen and you're taking notes from the professor, from the professor here. So what else is it that you would like to share with us on tonight before I keep going on with questions? Told you I'm a Brooks now. I can keep going now.
Oh well. Oh, I guess I should mention I'm working on a video to help people with art, like creative fear,
Mm.
like ways to deal with it. It's being
Uh-huh.
edited now. I was in Atlanta a month ago to shoot it, and one of my best, actually, my friend who got fired from that ministry 20 years
Uh-huh.
ago, he's the one who's editing this video. So
Oh wow.
yeah,
Nice.
he's gone on to do like movies and stuff for BET, and he edits a lot of movies for, I don't know, cable. So yeah, so that video will be out sometime soon. I can't say exactly when because he's squeezing it in between his other projects to edit,
Mm-hmm.
but what he showed me so far is looking pretty good, and I'm just hoping it'll help somebody who's struggling. Because I've had both in hip hop and in comics so many people who come to me with ideas about collaborations, right? Like they'd be like, "Hey, we should do this thing," or, "Hey, I got an idea for a song, shout," one of them things, right? And like we'll talk about it, they'll get excited, we'll make all the plans, and I'll be like, "All right, let's meet in a week and come
Mm-hmm.
back with such and such, such and such," and then they never show up, right?
Wow.
And for the longest time, I was like, "Is it me? Like, am I making it so people don't want to work with me?" Uh, I've come to realize that it's all different forms of fear.
Mm-hmm.
I posted something on social media asking people like, "Hey, my artist friends, what's the number one reason you don't finish things?" And I got a few hundred responses, and they were all forms of fear. And so I was like, okay, we gotta do something about this because there are too many brilliant people that the
Mm-hmm.
world will never hear of because they
Mm-hmm.
can't get out of their own way. And that
Mm-hmm.
is terrible to me. That's tragic.
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah.
And so that's what that video is about. Because, like, there's some comics artists here in Denver that are, like, so dope. They're so
Mm-hmm.
dope. And it
Mm-hmm.
just makes me mad that they can't put stuff out because they're so caught up in their own fear.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want them to have a path out of that so that the world isn't robbed of the beautiful things that they create, you know?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. Yeah, I tell you, fear will paralyze you. It will have you in a place where you can't move. I mean, it robs you of your destiny. And
Yeah.
I think that once we realize that, at least we begin to execute a new plan, or we begin to reach out for help. But many people can't even identify it as fear. That's
Right.
the sad thing, is when people are operating out of fear and they don't even realize it. They don't even realize that there are other options in life. They can grow, they can advance. And it is sad. It really sad. You see all of that talent and all of that brilliance just being wasted. So
Right.
wow, I'm excited to see that video.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the things that I say in the video, you talk about how fear paralyzes you. I talk about how a deer in headlights, they freeze,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't actually make them safer. It actually puts them in more danger, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah.
So like, it's okay to feel fear, but you can't let fear make your decisions for you, and that's really kind of the key thing.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow, you saying some good stuff. Look, everyone, please share this broadcast. Please. I ask every week, and I thank all of you that do. My return followers that are here on a regular basis. A lot of times you're not able to be here during the live broadcast, but you come back and you share and you comment. I want you to know I love you and I appreciate you so much. I want to give a couple of shout outs while I can. First of all, our cousin Billy is on here, and he said, "Hey, cousin." Then Clinton, my son Clinton's on. He said, "Hey, cousin, speaking to you." We had
Hello.
Pastor Brenda Span. Thank you so much for tuning in. Uh, is it Juanne?
Oh,
I'm sorry,
Juanine,
Young.
that's my lady.
Oh
Juanine.
my goodness, I totally messed your name up. I'm so sorry. Thank you for
That's the way.
correcting me, Alan.
That's the way Siri says her name. Like if I'll be like, "Hey Siri, call Juanine. Call it Juanian."
Well, look, I guess I'm as bad as Siri then. But thank you for tuning in and thank you for your comments. We have Lady Joy Burt. Thank you so much for tuning in. Shirley Miller, Lucille Owens, and I'm not able to see all the names. I thank everyone, whether you have commented or you've given us hearts or likes, and we love hearts. Hearts just give us a whole nother level of energy. It's like you see the hearts, it's like, yes, yes, they get it. So we do love and appreciate you. For those of you, again, that are Alan's followers and I'm not able to see your name because we aren't friends, please know that I appreciate you for being here. Thank you for sharing. For all the replay watchers, thank you. Shout out to you too. We love and we appreciate you. And for those of you that were not here in the beginning of the broadcast, I am Pastor Karen, your host for There Is Still Hope for You. This is a broadcast where we share to empower and to encourage you, letting you know that don't give up, don't quit. We are not defined by our failures, by our past, by our mistakes, by our delay. Sometimes we procrastinate. Today is the day that you can start over, you can move forward because there is hope. If you missed the beginning of the broadcast, I encourage you to go back and listen in your spare time, even if you have to do it in increments. 2 hours is a long time. I understand that. Sometimes I can't look at broadcasts that interest me in one sitting. I'll start and then I'll look at the mark. Okay, I'm at 21 minutes. And I'll go back later and I'll pick it up. It's like, okay, now I'm at 45 minutes. So sometimes you just, it's good information is what I'm trying to say. It's very good information. And I feel like it will benefit anyone that looks at it, not just this broadcast, but all of them. We don't do scripts. So I know that it's always inspired for my guests to come on and share as they feel led, because someone needs to hear what's being said. Someone needs to, Alan's talking about following his dreams and how he had to make changes that were uncomfortable. And we've all been in that place, and we could all very likely be there again. As life continues, there's constant change. There's always opportunities for growth. I'm one that's always trying to grow and develop. As it is now, I told my kids, I said, I know y'all gonna think I'm crazy, but I'm literally enrolled in 3 universities right now. And they were like, what? It's like, I said, because my birthday is coming up in January, and I am determined I'm going to have multiple certifications by the end of the year. Will I? My sacrifice is I have to give up a lot of family time, a lot of sleep, and that's it. A lot of my free time, but to me, it's worth it. It's worth it, not to. And my certifications, I'm now pursuing my certifications for counseling. So it's not just about me. I do that so that I can grow and become more knowledgeable to be a greater help to those that are connected to me, those that I'm assigned to. So it's important, to think enough of yourself to want to be better, to want to do more, to want to follow your dreams. You can do anything you set your mind to. I often hear people say, well, I can't do what they do. And it's sad to say, in our culture, a lot of times we hear people say, well, I can't do what the Caucasians do. I've never felt that way. I always felt like I could do what anyone else did. I felt like, oh, if they can do it, I can do it. So I think that, I encourage you to have confidence in yourself, believe in yourself. I don't care what you've done, where you've been, what mistakes you made, how old you are, how long it has taken you, how long you've been in a situation that you need to come out of. There is hope for you. I am a witness. That's why I'm here. I don't like cameras. I am doing this to help others. I'm doing this and I share, and we get guests to share because we want you to know that there is hope for you. My amazing guest, my handsome cousin, and I'm just sitting there, my handsome cousin, Alan Brooks, is my guest on this evening. And again, he has shared many, many, many good nuggets. So, Alan, I'm going to turn this back over to you so you can continue to share. I'll continue to take my notes so I can come up with some more questions.
Well, I want to know, are all three of the universities for counseling? Is it all counseling?
Well, this is the thing. I joined, one is a school of ministry. So that's one university. It's called Elijah Mantle Institute. And I'm already in ministry, but there's always room for growth and, to enhance that. But yes, as far as the counseling, I just enrolled in the National Association of Christian Counseling. And when I talk to the director, it's like, how am I on the phone with this man? You know what I'm saying? I mean, because it's like, how do I get to talk to the director? And as I was sharing with him just about my interests and what I do, he was like, oh yeah, you need more than this and a lot of times it's a marketing pitch. But in this case, I knew what he was saying made sense. So at the end of 3 to 4 months, because it's just one additional class for a couple of different certifications. So by the end of the year, I'll have 3 counseling certifications. And one of them will be to teach others to actually teach the classes for certification. And the thing about it, which he did not even know, I have an academy. So I am the founder and the president of Empowerment, Reset, and Transformation Academy at www.karenmaustin.com. So that's a coaching community and a mentoring community. And I'm like, wow, can add these courses to my academy. And he was like, academy? And then he said, did you say something about a book? And I was like, he was like so excited. And of course that inspired me because through that one conversation, I guess he could hear in my voice and the things I was sharing. He said, man, this is like perfect for you. He said, you already have the audience. And then by that time I was like, okay. It was like, okay, yes, send me the forms. Let me do this. So I'm really, really excited.
That's cool. I'm glad to hear that. That was actually going to be my next question about your book, because you mentioned that. But
yes.
Are you ready to talk about what you're working on? And it's a secret.
Yeah. Yes, I've actually started since you and I spoke. And so actually I'm really only working on one, but I have another one already that I plan to do to follow. Mine is more about healing and deliverance. So the first book is going to be about breaking free from your past,
Okay.
from the pains of yesterday, because I feel like a lot, and based on my experience, a lot of people are stuck in what happened years ago, what someone did to them, what they did not finish.
Yeah.
All of those things, I believe, and again, based on my experience, cripple you from moving forward, because we have to learn how to get past that. We beat ourselves up and we're dealing with hurt from broken relationships and so much trauma. And I often
Right.
say that people are dealing with layer upon layer upon layer of trauma that they don't
Hmm.
deal with, and it continues to add up. So therefore there's bitterness there, the depression comes in, the anger comes in,
Right.
low self-esteem, and all of those things. So that's what the first one is going to be, basically about healing from that. And then the second one is going to talk about how we walk around masqueraded. We have this mask appearing to be normal, and it's really okay to say you're not okay. And many
Yeah.
times we struggle with that, because again, fear. We have fear of being accepted. We want to be validated by the wrong people that have nothing to validate us. You know what I'm saying? But it's something that I think people with a low self-esteem tend to feel that they need. I need to be accepted. I need you to validate me and tell me I'm okay or I'm worth it. And sometimes we look for that in the wrong places, and it
Right.
puts us further back than we, instead of
Mm.
moving us forward.
Right.
Yeah. So
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Those both sound really, really moving and important.
thank you, cousin. Yeah, I might
This
have to
might.
reach out to you for some tips.
Well, I was gonna say this might be a time to share some. How you feel about that? I can share some right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's
Uh,
great.
all right. This is for you and whoever else is writing stuff. This is what people pay me for, and I'm telling y'all now for free.
Oh, well, thank
So,
you for free. Oh,
all
thank
right.
you.
So this is true of both fiction and nonfiction. Um, and these are just, think of them as just tools you can use. So they're not rules, they're just tools that might be useful.
Okay.
So every story is a journey, right? So a character begins here, ends up here. Like they start out rich, they end up poor. They start out lonely, they end up in love. Like it's a journey. And the story is all the things that happen between the beginning and the end.
Mhm.
So whatever obstacles they had to overcome. Often when you're writing a story about some kind of theory or like your spiritual beliefs or just anything like that, it's good to attach it to a personal journey.
Mm.
And it could be your journey, it could be somebody else's journey, but the key thing is you're just picking a portion of your life. You're not trying to tell your whole life story because that'll be a really long book and it might not all be relevant, you know?
Mhm.
So, so when you and I were talking about me working at that ministry, I didn't start when I was 10 years old. I started there, told you about some of the troubles and how it like influenced what I'm doing now. So there are two kinds of journeys that a character should have. And this is both, if it's fiction, it's a character you made up. If it's nonfiction, then it's just you identifying whoever you're talking about, identifying these two journeys in a person.
Mhm.
The first is external. So that's like the outward journey. So it means outward, external is like they have to do these 5 things in order to adopt the daughter, or they have to, like if it were like a movie like The Fast and Furious, it'd be like they have to drive these 5 places and defuse the bomb before, to save everybody, right? So external is usually something outside of yourself that you have to do. So like for me, in order to get free from that ministry that I was working at, I had to figure out where I was going to work next. I had to figure out how I was going to take care of myself. I had enough money, you know, and then I actually had to go through the steps of writing the resignation letter and presenting it to them. Those are external. The second journey is internal. So what is the emotional journey of the character? Usually that journey comes from whatever we feel like we're lacking, whatever hole we have in our soul. So like sometimes the internal journey is the search for love. Sometimes it's a search for family. Sometimes it's a search for like acceptance, validation. Sometimes we want somebody to tell us we're beautiful. Sometimes we need something to make us feel smart, you know? Mm-hmm. And so for me, at the ministry, my internal journey was, how can I was raised with the idea that art wasn't important. Mm-hmm. And I had to somehow find my way to believing that art was important enough to dedicate my life to it. Mm. And so there were obstacles in between, right? Like I worked jobs that weren't good for me. I had people that were telling me you should be doing X, Y, and Z. So there was an external journey and an internal journey. Mm-hmm. And if you figure out both of those things, then you end up leading somebody through your story in a way that is interesting to them. Does that all make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right on. Okay.
As you're talking, I'm thinking about the why, the what, and the how.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when you said intern, I was like, okay, that's the why.
Right.
The how and all. So I'm trying, it's like when you're writing and you're trying to come up with not the process, but I guess the structure. Right. I remember even to make your message clear, I have to, because I struggle with the whys. Like, I know why, but how do you say it? I know why I want to do it. I know why I'm a good coach. Right. I know that I'm an activation coach because I was stuck so long. So now I know how to activate things, but sometimes just making that message clear. So yeah, mm-hmm. I'm getting it. I'm like identifying, okay, that's the why, that's the how, that's the what.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and then towards the beginning, you basically have to think about what reason am I giving people to care enough to read the rest of this. So like your first few pages should be something interesting that makes people care. Sometimes that's a flash forward, like a scene that comes later in the book. You put it at the beginning so people are curious and want to find out what happens. Sometimes it's just introducing yourself or the character in a situation that makes them seem interesting. Mm-hmm. But you just have to think about like, all right, I'm writing a 150-page book or a 300-page book. Why do people want to read this? What reason am I giving them to read past the first 10 pages? Mm-hmm. And if you haven't given them a reason, you might have written a really good book. But if they're bored in the first 10 or 20 pages, they might never read it.
They get that far.
Right.
For me, the first few pages is like, okay, I'll come back to this later.
Right.
And also in the title, I think the title has to be something that engages. As an artist, I know when I was in multimedia school, we were told if you don't captivate the interest of your audience within 10 seconds, you're going to lose them. And
it's
I'm
true.
like, 10 seconds, wow. But it's really true.
Yeah, Dr. Dre said the same thing about making music. He's like, if I don't catch people's attention in the first 3 to 5 seconds, they're not going to listen to the song.
3 to 5, Lord. but and that I know is true because a lot of times for me, like I listen to Apple Radio a lot. My kids laugh at me because they said, "Mom, you find a song and you'll listen to it for years." I mean, one time I was listening at a Kirk Franklin. That's when we had cassettes, and I had it on replay, and it may have been on repeat. I think it was called on the cassette player.
Yeah.
But it may have been a year later, and I happened to hear another song, and I said, "I didn't know that song was on here." And my kids tease me because they say you listen to that one song over and over, and I do. But I'm trying to expand a little bit more, just my options, trying to explore different options. So I listen at Apple Radio a lot. And
Okay.
Apple will create a radio station for you or suggestions based on what they know you like and the songs that you
Right.
love. But in doing that, I can tell by the tempo and the beat. And if I like it, it's like, okay, I like it. And I'll listen. And most of the time, I'm pretty accurate, and there are others, as soon as I hear the first few seconds, it's like, nope, let me fast forward, let me go forward. So that's very true.
Yeah.
I'm a witness to that. 3 to 5 seconds is definitely accurate with that.
And I guess maybe one last thing is your description of your book. Some people call it the elevator pitch. They call it that because you should be able to explain it in the space of an elevator ride. You got to write that too. So like a lot of times we feel like after we've written the book that we should just be able to make up the description, but you got to work on an elevator pitch because you should be able to explain what it is in 1 to 2 sentences at the most. And honestly, you don't have to tell what the whole book is about. You just have to tell enough of what it's about to make people want to read it. And so that's something you got to work on. You go through a few drafts, but then you be ready when people say, hey, what is your book about? You know exactly what to say because you worked on it.
Wow. Yeah. That's what I'm working on. I did my outline and I'm just starting on the content. Now, I do have a question. The forward section, exactly what is the purpose of that? I mean, what should it include?
Honestly, a lot of times it's almost like an endorsement. Like you try to get somebody more famous than you to do it. Because like so for the book that we did of my newspaper comics, we got State Representative Leslie Herod to do the foreword. And so now I can put her name on the cover and they'll be like, oh, State Representative. Oh,
Right.
And she was really cool and she wrote a very good foreword. And with my first book, I tried to get somebody who I knew who worked I've met a couple times, who worked in cartoons to write the foreword. But he was too busy. He was working on like a Star Wars cartoon or something. But usually that's what you want. Like somebody who just has a little more of a name than you. And there's different ways you can go about recruiting. Like, so, you reach out to them. Either you say, hey, can you write a foreword for me? And if you don't have time, I can just ask you 3 interview questions and put it together into a foreword, And so, like as easy as you can make it for them.
Wow.
And, yeah. So like in the case of what you're talking about, where you're going through writing about like emotional issues and counseling and stuff like that, even if you just found somebody who is a head of a counseling association in your city, that's already a cool endorsement,
Okay. That's good to know. Wow. So I know that you teach, you're a professor and you teach writing, correct?
That's right.
Do you mentor as well? I mean, because it may be somebody just listening is like, oh, wow, he's giving these nuggets. He's already given us 1 and 2, talked about the external and the internal and, the whys and the what. I'm taking notes. And as I'm writing, it's like, okay, Karen, you can go back and watch this. I'm just so used to taking notes. That's what I do, Let me get this, let me get that. So I'm somewhat studious. Yeah.
Good for you.
But,
yeah.
I mean, I enjoy learning. I enjoy being around people that are further in life or whatever area I'm interested in growing in. I like having them in my circle because I learn from them, even just through communication, even communicating with you. As I told you previously, every time we talk, I learn something else, or, it's just, you really inspire me a lot. So yeah, I love being around people like that.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Yeah.
That was a funny thing. So there's a pretty good comic book community here in Denver. And so I know most of the people who do comics, it's like maybe 30 people or so. And when I got hired as professor teaching graphic novel writing, suddenly there was this period where like 2 or 3 times a month, there would be somebody in my inbox like, hey, can you read my, 130-page manuscript, to give feedback and stuff like that. And while I was going to say I would like to, but I don't know that I wanted to read everybody's stuff. So that's probably not totally honest. While it would be nice if I could read everybody's thing, I cannot.
Right.
Yeah. And so I've had to tell people that because, like learning to write for me was work, and reading your stuff and telling you all of the things that need to be worked on is work,
Yeah. Right.
And, like I think it especially happens with people who have just kind of written something but not studied how to write, which is okay. Like, do that, but just don't look to me to fix everything,
Right, absolutely, yeah. And because that's what you do, I'm sure you'll pick up on a lot,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, so I have students at Regis, I have students at Lighthouse Writers Workshop. That's like a school for just adults who want to take classes to learn how to write. So I teach there, and then I have a couple of people who, like clients who have hired me to go through their manuscripts and give them feedback and stuff. So, that's really cool. But between doing that and writing my own stuff and hosting things and doing my own marketing,
I think you're freezing.
Doing my own marketing, it's a lot.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I can imagine. So that workshop that you mentioned, is that open to the public or only those that are enrolled in the university that you teach at?
Which workshop? The video?
You just mentioned that they're a workshop, a writing workshop for students.
I see. The name of the school is Lighthouse Writers Workshop.
Oh, okay, that's a school.
Yes, but their classes are usually online. They've been the entire pandemic. I'm going to teach my first in-person one next month. So I don't think that's going to be online, but yeah, like they have a lot of stuff that you can take via Zoom. My mother took one of my classes, and she's in Maryland via Zoom, and it was good. Yeah.
How was that? How did you feel having your mother as a student?
It was fine. My mom's been pretty, like, always academic too. It didn't make me nervous. It was fine, and she had good feedback and stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow. So how did you address her? Did you call her mom?
At the beginning of class, I told, like, it was a class of like 10 people. So I was like, so I was like, this is my mother, and so everybody kind of knew. Yeah. But yeah, no, that was cool. And I was glad it was during the lockdown, especially. So I was glad that she could do it because it was something that kept her engaged, so she wasn't like bored and alone, So.
Wow, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. So I know you like to write. How do you enjoy teaching?
It's cool, actually. So the cool thing about the master's program at Regis is that it's not a Monday through Friday thing. Basically, people at that level are trying to learn how to finish their manuscript. So we meet at the beginning of the semester, we come up with a study plan, and we come up with dates that they have to send me stuff, and we check in once a month.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so I love that, because if it were Monday through Friday, I probably wouldn't have taken the job just because I need to have time to write my own stuff.
Yeah, that's nice. And it gives the students the opportunity to work at more self-paced because they have that longer time span to come back and to meet. Hopefully they're not procrastinating and cramming at the last minute like we so often do.
I've had a couple, who do that. And it usually shows, but maybe they get away with it, I don't know. But whatever. Basically, you read it, so they send it to me, I read it, send back comments, and then we set up a meeting to discuss it so they can ask whatever questions they have. And that ends up being a good way, I think. Because I think that Monday through Friday grind would not be ideal for me.
Yeah, that's a bit much. Even as a student, that's a lot. I know when I was in grad school, and it just came to my mind as you were talking, and I don't even remember what class it was. I believe it was a project management class, but um, I received an A+ on one of my papers. I don't even remember what it was about. And he wrote a note on there and said, "This is one of the best papers I have ever written." And
Nice.
put it on Facebook. It was pumped. I was really, really excited. And I've pretty much been a straight A student, but I found that as after I got older, it took me a little longer. It's like, wait a minute, hold on, because I was one that I never really had to study hard. I could review something the night before and ace it.
Nice.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? I mean, because I was able to retain. But then when I went back to school to pursue my degrees, it's like, Karen, this is not as easy as so when he put that on my paper, and I'm trying to think of what it was. I don't
That's so
really
funny.
remember. But I know I was
I
in
was
grad school. He said, "This is one of the best papers I've ever read." And I was like, whoa.
I was like that too, all the way through elementary and high school. And then when I went to college, I skipped a couple of grades to go to college. I skipped 11th and 12th, and then went to college. And but what it meant was that I was behind on science classes,
Hmm.
and so I took a required chemistry class in my freshman year, and the lowest score I ever got on the test was that one. I think it was like I got 13 out of 100, and I had studied for it, but it basically just the 2 years of chemistry that I had never taken.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Wow.
I did pass that class at the end. It was hard, but I made it through.
Wow. You skipped the 11th and the 12th. Now I skipped the 8th grade. I went from
Oh,
the 7th
nice.
to the 9th. Yeah.
Okay.
And you bringing back memories. Yeah, and I did very well. I was just telling my granddaughter this weekend how important it is to keep up with everything. And even if you have already gotten the credits that you need to graduate, if you're still going to school, make sure you keep up with your grades. Make sure that you maintain your GPA. I know when I went to apply in 11th grade, I had all the credits I needed to graduate, but my mother would not let me take whatever the work study programs were, where you could leave a couple of hours early.
Oh
She wouldn't
yeah.
let me do that. So I think I took like study halls and little bum classes. And so when I went to register for college, they said, "You did wonderful from the 9th to the 11th, but what in the world happened to you in the 12th grade?" Hey, you can see that? And they
Wow.
said, "Yes, yes, we can see." What did you do? And I said, "Nothing." I didn't want to be there, and
Right.
I didn't realize the impact that it would have on me moving forward, So I was able to tell my granddaughter just yesterday, I was like, "Look, I'm telling you, don't play around. I don't care how many credits you have. If you're there, make the best of it, continue to do your best and make sure that you maintain that high GPA." But it didn't impact me from getting into college, but it just hurt me. It hurt my feelings. It really hurt. I really see that because I was always very particular about maintaining that level of excellency. It meant a lot to me,
Right.
to have an A's. A B hurt my feelings. If I got a B, it's like, oh no, oh no. Now, when I went to college, undergrad, and I was in English 101. And so many of the students were like, "Oh, is this your first time?" And I said, "Yeah." "Oh, this is my third time." And someone
Huh.
else was like, "This is my second time." I kid you not, Alan. It probably was 75% of the class that
Wow.
had taken this course multiple times, and I couldn't understand it. And I asked my professor, I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "Because many people don't speak well. They use a lot of profanity, and they
Hmm.
don't take their time to pronounce words properly. So when it comes to writing, they don't know what to put in place of that curse word or, that slang word. And I was like, okay, it makes a lot of sense.
Wow.
So, yeah, I was like, this is unbelievable. Now, I don't know if that's still the case now. That was many, many years ago. But
Yeah. But I
I
like
can
that.
understand.
I
Huh?
was saying I like that prodigious nature, skipping grades, runs in our family. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, interesting what comes out. Yep, I definitely skipped the 8th grade. And
Nice.
look, and could skip the 12th grade, but my mama wouldn't let me.
Right.
So
Hmm.
yeah, that's nice. Wow, this has been so great. So we still have a few more moments. So if you'd like to share with us about your contact information, your website, how people can reach you, what services that you offer. And we talk about your book. You have a book signing coming up in September, correct?
Yes.
September, is it the 9th, I think?
Yes. September 9th. You got it. 9/9.
See, I'm gonna tell you why I remember, because I said I want to surprise him. How can I get to Colorado for that book signing? But but when I looked at the schedule, the flight schedules, they kind of conflict
Oh.
because I forgot it's a different time zone.
Oh yeah. Well, that
Yeah,
would have been
so
fun. Yeah.
that's how I remember. See, behind the
Nice.
scenes, I was like, wow, I wish I could go. But like I said, I'll be traveling this weekend. And then I have a family event on the 5th, and it was like running together with some other stuff.
I
So
got you.
just know my heart will be there with you. But
Yeah, I
share with us
appreciate
a
that.
little bit about that.
Okay, so the September 9th is a book signing for the newspaper comic that I do. We collected that into a book, and that's me and artist Corey Redford. So I write it, she draws it, and that's the one where we're going to be interviewed by State Representative Leslie Harrod.
Mhm.
She's a really cool sister, and she's gonna ask us questions and talk to us about creating that comic. It'll be at the Tatter Cover, which is one of the biggest and probably the biggest independent bookstore here in Denver. Then on the 19th at Mutiny Information Cafe, which is another bookstore that's more kind of like punk rock underground cool. We're having a release for Grieving Mall. That's the story that I did with Sarah. She's the artist, where she said that she was healed of her body image issues in working on it.
Okay.
My website is my name, R. Allen, without a period, just R. Allen Writes with a W.
See,
When
it's
you spell
already
it,
scrolling. You see that?
all
It's
right.
already had
Yeah,
it
you're on
scrolling.
it.
Uh-huh.
And it's ALAN, 4 letters more better. People keep trying to throw in extra L's and E's, and
Uh-huh.
it is just ALAN. In fact, I'm named after my father. He's Rodney Allen Brooks, and he misspelled the name Allen until he saw his birth certificate in his 20s. And he was like, oh, there's only one L. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
anyway, yeah. So on my site, you can see my TED Talk. There's some free comics that you can read. Some that I drew, others that other people drew, but I wrote all of them. There are links to the podcast that I host. You can see all my news coverage, like interviews on TV news and radio and stuff like that. And you can buy things. And that's the real thing. You can go buy some things to make it possible for me to create more things.
Uh-huh. Yes, that's good. I just purchased your book too. I received my
Yes.
email saying that it was just sent, I think 2 days ago. I
Yeah, so
received
you
the
should have
email
it
saying that
soon.
was your, yeah. So I don't know if you actually do that or if you have an admin or something that does it. But yeah, I
Nope,
ordered the
I
book.
do it.
Okay, so you already knew I purchased it then. Yep.
Yep.
So hopefully I'll have that soon.
Yeah, no, yeah, it
Yeah.
should be there soon. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so, and then I'll be hosting the Museum of Contemporary Art, Denver's podcast. It's called How Art is Born. And I think that kicks off next Tuesday. And it should be on every every podcast platform. But,
Wow.
yeah, so if you guys want to look up stuff, you can look on my website, or you can find me on Instagram, and it's the same thing, R. Allen Writes. I'm pretty whack on Twitter, but there's some stuff, and it's R Allen _Writes there. But yeah, I mean, y'all can find me. I'm Googleable.
And what about on Facebook? Where it's R. Allen Brooks, correct? On
Yes,
Facebook?
yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's awesome. Your podcast, tell us a little bit about that, and if you don't mind, in the next few minutes that we have left.
Okay. It has a bad word in the name, so I just got you out the link. But it basically, when I started writing, I wanted to talk to other people who are creative, and because when I started out in reading comic books, I didn't know there was nobody else who was into comic books in my school, like nobody else. I had one other friend. He went to a different school. He was into comics, so we could talk about it like, once a month maybe. He's still one of my best friends. He gave me this Batman ring for being the best man in his wedding.
Oh wow! Oh nice! Yeah. Wow.
But so when he and I were 10, we went to our first comic book convention. Back then, those were really small. It'd be like 300 people, and not only were we the only kids, but we were the only Black people. And like, I wanted to, like, they just didn't have stuff. Like, remember Star Trek, Mr. Spock? They would make those Vulcan ears, but they didn't make any Black ones. They only made white ones. So it's amazing to see how all of that has grown. Like, now comic conventions are like 100,000 people show up, right? And it's all kinds of different people. So I wanted to talk to people who come from sort of those diverse backgrounds into the geek world. So I've interviewed like Black women video gamers, Native American comics creators, just a lot of different people. And I even got to interview a few famous people. Like I interviewed Nichelle Nichols, the sister from the original Star Trek.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was cool. I asked her if she still makes music because she released a whole bunch of albums. So I was like, do you still make music? And she says, do you still breathe? So that was kind of funny.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can find links to that on my website too.
Awesome. Wow, you are doing some amazing thing, and I like it because you're well-rounded. You do so much, and you're so proficient in it. You're you do very well. I'm really proud of you.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Yeah, I'm always excited to see people that are just living a purpose-driven life. You know what I'm saying? They're fulfilling that purpose. They're creative, and they're doing what they enjoy. I think that's really, really important. That as you stated earlier, why just be in a position where you're unhappy? You're miserable. You don't want to go to work or whatever the case may be, whatever you're doing. And I know that a lot of times we all have to start off that way. But it's important, for someone that may be in that position. I'm not knocking that because we've all been there. Alan has been there. I have been there. I'm sure all of us have. But I often tell my mentees, and I tell my nieces and nephews and my grandchildren, always have a plan. If you don't like it, have a plan of execution, an exit plan, and a plan of execution for what's coming next in your life. And even while you're there, especially in the workforce, I tell them, look, do your best, do what you have to do, because that's a reference. And whatever you learn, it always looks good on your resume until you're able to get where you want to go. So it's awesome to see you doing what you enjoy. You're inspiring others. You're meeting great people. You're doing a lot for your community. I commend you. That's excellent.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate you asking me to be here.
Thank you for coming. I was like, well, sometimes for me, just getting started, I've been doing this a year and a half. And initially, I started out in the radio station. And a lot of my guests were out of town and they would call in. And so I wanted a different effect. In particular, after the pandemic, Zoom was available, StreamYard, the more like the video conference type. And I think that my guests appreciate the fact that they can actually see. I mean, my audience appreciate the fact that they can see the guests. I think it's more
Yeah.
engaging. So,
Yeah.
knowing that you have been interviewed by different people at a different level, I was like, okay, I'm going to ask him, and there are others that I have asked as well that I know that they've been all over the world and all kind of magazines. They've been on CNN and BET, but everyone says yes. So thank you as well. Just for
Right.
saying yes. I appreciate you coming to the little person, but that's okay. Because I see where I'm growing. I see the vision. I believe in the vision. And I know we
Yeah.
have to start somewhere. You know what I'm saying? So I always say if one person has been blessed by what we share, by the guests, then I'm okay. Because that's the
Right.
purpose of it. Yep. So I thank you so much for coming and for sharing and all your nuggets. I'll probably be reaching out to you. I'll pay. I don't mind paying. No, I said that because I'm an entrepreneur. And I'm not saying I don't mind helping people, but I understand what it is to be in the business, and I respect that. Even for my family members, when they come for services and they pay and I do a contract or I give them a receipt, they say, no, I don't need it. Oh, yes, you do, because it's business. Right now, we're not family. This is business. So I do understand that, but I know that it's been so long since I've really, really written. And to think that I can go back and do what I did 20 years ago without some type of counsel, so to speak, or someone to kind of direct me, because I'm sure there's a lot that I've forgotten, So yeah,
Right.
I'll be looking you up, because
Right on.
I would definitely be looking you up. Well, thank you again for being here. Is there anything you want to give, any shout outs or anything?
No.
Okay.
I was thinking, I was like, oh, there'll be somebody that I should have mentioned. Shout out to my dad and my mom. How about that? My sister.
All right. Are they tuning in? Are they watching? Hey,
Who
family.
knows?
If not, they may watch the replay.
Right.
Yeah. So, hi, family. Hi, everyone.
I already shouted out my lady because she's watching. So, yeah. We got the important peoples.
Okay. Thank you so much. I know, and to everyone that's listening, or watching, and for those of you that will watch the replay, look, okay, no, I can't hear. So, Alan had a class tonight, and uh, when we booked, he said, I'll get someone else to teach, or I think that's what you said, or you'll reschedule. And I want you to know that means so much to me. And initially, when you said you teach a writing class on Thursday, I understood what you were saying about, but then when I realized, I was like, oh, he's a professor at a university. It's like, oh my goodness. So I mean, I really appreciate you making that sacrifice and doing that. Talking about a sacrifice, to be here 2 hours just to share and just to help other people, including myself. I'm so humbled by that. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. I mean, it was good to talk to you.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. If you have any questions that you think of later, or for the replay watchers, if you're viewing and you have any questions, please put them in the comments. And when the broadcast is over, I'm going to type Alan's information in the comments so that if you desire to connect with him, you can do so if you're interested in purchasing any of his books or his products. you can do so at his website, and that information will be available to you. Thank you again, cousin. I love you and I appreciate you. And
I
you
love you
have an
too.
amazing evening. Thank you. And to everyone, remember, no matter what you're going through, there is still hope for you. God bless you all, and thank you for tuning in. Good night. Bye, Alan. Love you.
Bye. Love you too.
Okay. Good night.